But thank you very much for coming. So this is our 2024 Energy Benchmark launch event here in Barcelona. I work for the GSMA Intelligence team. Emanuel, my colleague who's co-hosting with me today, also does. And we're super excited because this project has been something we've now been running for, just keep coming in, have been running for 4 years. And at the outset, we really started with a simple question, which was, what is the current level of energy efficiency in the industry? There's a lot of talk about it, but talk's great, you need facts. And so what we've sort of done over time is really tried to build up to something that is a common evidence base that gets bigger and bigger every year. And what we wanted to do today was really share some of the findings from that, from the key results this past year, and talk about with a great panel, which we'll introduce as we go along, and fireside chat, talk about with leaders their perspective from their own companies, how it's working for them, what is happening, and sort of what really needs to be looked at as gap areas. So as you can see, I'm going to start just by giving a summary presentation of some of the key findings. Very quick, 10 minutes tops. You don't want to hear me talk much longer than that. And then Emanuel is going to come up with great panelists, Noelia from Ericsson, Tony from Nokia, Kyriakos from Vodafone, to talk about sort of their lived experience and their plans and their reflections on this topic. And then I'm going to have a chat with Ravi, who comes from the tower sector, to bring kind of a different perspective to this. There's a growing integration between towercos and mobile operators, particularly in places like Africa, other parts of the developing world, and indeed advanced markets, to get their perspective. And then, as I say, that QR code is to the report. It's free, it's public. Take a picture, download it, and ask any questions you want, but mostly get in touch, because if you are an operator, we would love to have you participate in the benchmark for this coming year. All make sense? Good. So when we, as I say, when we started this sort of 4 years ago, we didn't really know how many operators we could actually cover, and it started small. I think we had 6 or 7 operators in our first year. And the way this has grown, though, is that I think there's a network effect by people seeing the value of having a database and a data evidence base from which to track efficiency and look at how that feeds into their own network and corporate strategy, as well as things like external reporting. This is a snapshot of where we are this year. And you can see kind of on the chart, I don't think we're in a small room, so I don't need the microphone. The sort of highlighted footprint areas of the map are the coverage areas of the operators that have participated in the project. So you see 16 operator groups covering about just over 20% of the global telco market share, just under 2 billion subscribers. That's pretty good representation. We're honest about the fact we're still missing some gaps, particularly in North America. Thanks. Particularly in North America and parts of Asia. But we're having conversations with operators from those regions to try and broaden that out as well, so we get to a truly representative base. Right. I talked about, I think I can just put this here. I talked about some of the data findings we've had, and I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time, but I wanted to preface the panel and the fireside with some of those. And feel free to take a pic, or you can see these in the published reports. When we look at the benchmark, we track a number of KPIs year over year. We track this data, and I'll explain how to interpret this in a minute. This is the core efficiency yield. This is kind of the gold star, North Star metric, which is the kilowatt hours of energy to power a gigabyte of data transfer. We also track, they're not shown on the slide, but we also track the fuel splits. So in other words, what type of energy is being used between the grid power, between renewables, between diesel. And importantly, for a telco business, we track where that energy is being used. So is it the radio network? Is it the cloud for the core? Is it in other parts of the business like fleet? Not surprisingly, the radio is the majority. It's about 75 to 80% of the total. But that doesn't make the others any less important, because really to become an optimized energy company, you've got to be able to look across the whole board. So we're showing this as an example of some of the data cuts. This is the core yield. And there's sort of 2 points to make. We don't reveal any company level data for obvious reasons. But what we've shown is kind of an anonymized histogram plot to show the variation. And overall, you get to a number of about 0.12, 0.12 kilowatt hours per gigabyte. I'll show the time saying that's down on last year, which is a good thing. Come on in. And you get this sort of, most of the operators are clustered within a fairly tight range, but not all. And that's sort of the reason we show this chart, is that you have a lot of operators sort of down here, which looks fairly similar. Just grab seats anywhere you can. Fairly similar, but you do have a number which sort of plot as outliers, quite a bit outliers. And why that matters is that you get, this sort of identifies where networks may be out of line for reasons that need correcting. Maybe they're overusing diesel. Maybe they have an imbalance with the cell site density. Maybe it's just old equipment. 3G is less energy efficient than 4G and 5G and so on. So these are the types of insights we want to pull out, both for our participating operators, but even more so for the industry overall. Does that make sense there? If anybody has any questions, feel free to. Yeah, go on. We do, built in. We can, and then afterwards we can talk about exactly where the data cuts are, but yeah. Right, so this is arguably a more important view because, and I'll just talk for 5 more minutes before we get to our panel. What this is showing is the trend over time. So on the left, and year 3 is 2023, year 4 is 2024. So on the left shows that core efficiency yield, the kilowatt hours per gigabyte. And on the right, it shows that same metric, but only for the radio network. So what you want to see is a downward trend. Normally, when you plot charts, you want to see a nice upward trend. This is like golf. You want to have a lower score. You want to be below par. So last year was about 0.17. Now it's come down to 0.12. So that's a good thing. That's really good because it shows progress in getting more energy efficient. It shows that there is an increasing realization of the need for equipment innovation to drive that change. It's been helped by a larger share of renewables. We're not showing that, but you'll see in the report there's a higher use of renewables this year than last year, and that's been trending up everywhere. There's a number of reasons for that. And it shows that there's probably a lot of sunsetting of legacy equipment. As operators sunset their 2G and 3G networks, that pays dividends from an energy perspective. The radio is a little bit lower. It's less because it's not accounting for the entire base. But as you would expect, that's also trending down. So that's a good thing. So when we look at that overall, that's cause for encouragement. But what we want to see is the scale of the participating operators growing so that we can measure that over time and how that varies with the adoption of 5G and other digitization activity. Yeah, please come on in. So when we look ahead to 2025, what are we thinking about? There's a number of factors, and I think let me just first say sort of how this works as a just brief awareness. When mobile operators participate in this, we have a public report which shows industry-level data and trends and drivers and progress. Individual operators actually get a customized benchmark report showing how they do against the overall and regional averages. There's some seats up here. And so when we look at that, those dashboards will continue, and there's a whole sort of community of knowledge sharing that we've built around this. Best practices. We have 4 workshops on different topics. And increasingly, we're looking to broaden this out to a wider tent of ecosystem players to understand how they can contribute. What is the role of vendors? What is the role of towercos? We have Ravi here to talk to about that today. What is the role of systems integrators? This is a very interconnected, there's some seats up there, interconnected kind of sphere. And I think most importantly, and I'll leave on there, I'll end on this, is that as we continue to modernize this benchmark, it can't just be about energy efficiency alone. That matters, but ultimately this is a holistic conversation about both how you get to net zero and how you do that makes financial sense. We've always been proponents that green is good for business. Might sound a bit corny, but we've got evidence to suggest that that's absolutely true. And we want to drive that through this evidence base. Right. I think I've talked enough. You can get the report there. That's just a little bit about us, naked sales pitch. You can go on and check out our website. We've got a team full of great people that covers the telco sector globally, but energy and sustainability is obviously a key part within that. And in case you missed it the first time, you can hold your phones up to download that, send it around to your friends. Your kids probably don't want to read it yet, unless they're really keeners. They might be. Maybe they do. I shouldn't presume. And then, as I say, we'll feel free to get in touch with it. I'll just wait for a minute for people to hold that, and then we will get on to our panel. All right. Okay. Without further ado, I'm gonna ask Emanuel to come up with Noelia, Tony, and Kiri, and they're gonna have about a 25-minute panel, and then after that, I'm gonna have a fireside chat with Ravi. So, come on up.
I don't think, yeah. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emanuel Kolta. I'm a lead analyst at GSMA Intelligence. And thank you so much, Tim, for the presentation. And in the next 25 minutes, I think we're going to have a very unique opportunity to have 2 end-to-end vendor and real global mobile operator at the same panel. And I really hope that we can have this open conversation and speak about energy efficiency, not just about the report, but also about what 2 end-to-end vendor and Vodafone, the mobile network operator, is doing in that space. So first of all, I would like to ask you to quickly introduce yourself. Who are you and where are you from? Thank you.
Thank you, Emanuel, and thank you, Tim. My name is Noelia Lopez, and I was born in Spain, in Madrid. And I love technology and technology for good. So I studied telecommunications and telemedicine. I've been almost 20 years in Ericsson, and I have worked with Ericsson in several parts of the world, focused on business development. But now recently, I'm in marketing and communications, focused on sustainability and AI.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Kyriakos, Exadaktylos. I'm heading the Group Network Architecture Specification and responsible for energy performance in Vodafone Group. Really excited to be here, and thanks for the invitation. Yeah, I love challenges. I'm an ultramarathon runner, but professionally the challenge I have is to keep our energy consumption broadly flat at the group level while traffic goes up and 5G network is growing. So that's really a challenge. I'm here to share some of the great things we're doing.
Hello everyone, I'm Tony Darcy and I'm in my 30th year at Nokia. In networks the whole time, never in the phone business, always in the networks business. Both sides, fixed and mobile, and everything in between. Today I have spent the last 8 years in sustainability, looking at stakeholder engagement and how we enable our own organisation to use sustainability as a competitive advantage, because we believe it's a core component of our business. It's one of the 6 pillars of our strategy as Nokia corporate strategy, and therefore we see that it has to be embedded throughout the organisation as well as throughout the portfolio and the way we do business, as well as the development in Bell Labs, which is also part of Nokia. So I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Tony. So basically we launched the report, as Tim mentioned, this morning, and we cover 1.7 billion people with 95 networks. So probably this is the biggest energy efficiency analysis and measurement in the whole industry. Let me know if you know any other studies in this scale, and which requires a very close coordination with the mobile operators and harvesting all their data and analyze it and publish openly what we can. All those data points we could see this morning and which is in the report, which one did surprise you the most? Is there anything what stand out for you?
If I can start. So last year we have the same result about not considering 5G the most efficient energy efficient technology in the short term. And this is something that still strikes me, honestly, because in the standardization we have done a great achievement on that. We reduce the signaling, space more the frequency of sending the data, the signaling, and also we can send the data faster. And this means that the radios can get to sleep mode, idle mode, more times. So we can get the radios more with sleeping times. Increasing sleeping times is reducing energy consumption. So only by moving from 4G to 5G, we can reduce 30% energy consumption. And in fact, we have checked this with our customers, but also in our own equipment. So for instance, if we have a radio with multiple bands and then we move one band from 4G to 5G, we got an improvement of 18%. And if we move the 3 bands, can be 48%. So I think here the key thing is how much we move traffic from 4G to 5G. We need to enable with the terminals, but we also need to enable with modernization of the radio equipment, because this is what we have also witnessed in our studies, because we also have this collaboration with the customers to monitor, to observe the metrics, is that there is 2 factors, the modernization of the equipment and also the refarming to 5G.
Thanks, Noelia. And yeah, that was a very surprising data point. So we had workshops during the project, as Tim mentioned, and most of the operators expected 5G is less energy efficient after launching the technology, which means obviously before you reach this kind of critical mass of 5G users, you can actually experience per user, per data, lower energy efficiency results, which is obviously a temporary thing because the generation itself is designed to be energy efficient and more modern, obviously, than 4G.
Yeah, another ratio I show is the 66%, I think, of the operators' energy comes from non-renewable source, from traditional grid, and only 29% from renewables. I think this will improve year on year, as you show on the graph. Fingers crossed. In Europe, at Vodafone Group, we did tremendous effort 2 years ago to be 100%, and the focus now last year has been in Africa. So when our financial year will close end of this month, hopefully, we will be also 100% in Africa from energy matched from renewable sources. That has been a tremendous effort, and working also with governments and regulatory frameworks there to allow PPA schemes and everything. Has been great work in Egypt, in South Africa. So yeah, I mean, with Africa is a region where we pay particular focus because many things are not offering the right opportunities as we have in Europe. So it's a big challenge, but also big focus.
Yeah, I think for me that I said to you earlier, there weren't many data points that I was surprised by. I think one of the challenges is because of the different coverage of operators, the comparison to the previous year is slightly more difficult. And that's probably where you externally learn more. For the operators themselves, they will get their breakdowns, obviously, and they'll get much more detailed data, which is usable then for them. So I wasn't surprised. The one thing that surprised me most was the fact that vandalism was one of the big challenges. And, you know, like I said, I've been here 30 years, and when 2G was first rolled out in the UK, because the cabinets looked completely different and new, all the vandals were interested in them. So we had to do a lot of anti-vandalism at that stage. So I think there are things we maybe haven't learned from before that we should still apply and still look how we do that. But I think the data as a whole is more about giving the operator hotspot ideas. Where can they place their bets, if you like, in different areas? I think most operators know that. I think you said earlier you can compare within Vodafone across your different operators. So that's the biggest use of the data, I think, from my perspective.
Thanks, Tony. So 5G is short-term seen as less energy efficient. 66% of the renewables, which can improve further, and vandalism as a key bottleneck for improvements of energy efficiency. Thanks.
Do you think, though, that the fact that 5G is seen as something not so efficient when it's first rolled out is no different to any other G that's been rolled out before, in the sense that when it's first rolled out, it's after that you do the optimization, you improve the energy efficiency. So it's always at the beginning slightly less efficient.
But yeah, you are right on that. But now the standardization has focused a lot in 5G, and this standardization work has been driven also for the higher energy costs. So I think the industry has taken action with 5G more on energy because of the energy crisis. So that has accelerated the improvements in the design and standardization, in the time domain, in the frequency domain, so that we have a lean design of the technology to enable these new innovations. But at the end, to enable these innovations in the vendors or technology innovators, we need to be hand in hand with the standardization work. And that will enable these new innovations and solutions. But yeah.
I completely agree, and when you obviously launch a new network layer, you cover a huge amount of area with a relatively low amount of connections. And so this is not a 5G specific thing, but it's actually impacting mobile operators' energy consumption. In the break, Kyriakos mentioned that obviously they faced significant amount of improvement in energy usage after launching a new technology. My next question would be, as a vendor or as a mobile network operator, what is your biggest achievement recently in the topic of energy efficiency? What are you the most proud of?
I start. So At the top, I will start mentioning for sure the shifting from legacy networks to new generation networks, right? So we're switching off 3G in the last remaining markets in Vodafone Group, and we encourage the shift of traffic from 4G to 5G. When it comes to efficiency of 5G, let me clarify a few things. So when we talk about efficiency, that's the bits per hertz per kilowatt. Okay, so when you look at that ratio, 5G is far more efficient than any other generation before. Compared to 4G, at least 90%, that's all our evidence we have based on real measurements. What happened is that when you introduce 5G in the high band, in the 3.5 gigahertz, the antennas of massive MIMO consume a lot, in particular when you don't have traffic, when you have ideal traffic and you don't have a lot of traffic density. We worked a lot close with our partners, Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei, Samsung, to define a concept which we call 0-bit, 0-watt. That means when you don't have traffic, we don't want consumption, right? So the innovations are there now with all our partners, and we will have less than 5 watt consumption when we have ideal or low traffic at night. Okay, that will make tremendous difference on the overall consumption of the network. The challenge we have is we will have this supported only on new hardware, right? So we're working now to see how we can do similar thing on the legacy hardware, right? So it's important that we modernize our equipment to get these new features. We need to do more when it comes to deployment of and development of new energy efficient features, and also the optimization of those saving features at SON and SMO layer. So the configuration and parameters become real time based on traffic conditions and not manual. This is where you maximize really the potential of energy saving. And this area of AI and digital, we create new use cases to see how we can reduce consumption and unlock further savings. We are doing several use cases for example, anomaly detection. We go on a big network like Germany or UK and find out 2,000 cells have different behavior some days than the traditional pattern across the month. So then we deep dive into these cases and say what's going wrong. We optimize them. And these are really opportunities that are part of the automation and digitalization of energy, which needs to come and unlock further savings.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that there that resonates, because obviously you've done it with both Nokia and Ericsson as well. So I think first of all, we recently had our net zero 2040 target approved by the Science-Based Targets. It's our third SBT since 2017, so we've always revisited when we'd had to and made it actually more challenging. But that's important because the radio is a big part of that program, and how do you transition the radio to that net zero target? And having that across your business helps your business have the goal in mind all the time, and then building the plans that apply. So when we have the optimization of the network, once you've done deep sleep, you have extreme deep sleep, which makes it even easier. And then you have the AI optimization on top of that. You start to build your toolkit, if you like, for the energy efficiency, because it's not one answer. I can tell you 2 years ago when I met operators, some of them didn't even know they had energy efficient software in the package they'd bought with 5G, because they buy them as packages of software. And so that cherry, getting the low hanging fruit first and working with that, optimizing. But what we also see, and what we work really hard on, is the embodied emissions of the product. Because what happens is when you go 100% renewable, energy efficiency becomes a pure cost item, not a sustainability item. And that's when the operator focuses on the value chain and the embodied emissions. What energy is used, what materials are used in the production and the delivery of that product. And so we've done a lot of work looking at the metals and materials, looking at the design of the product, like Habrock, the radio product. It's probably the best radio Nokia's ever had from both an energy efficiency perspective and an embodied emissions perspective, because it's smaller, which brings you benefits to your logistics, your materials, and all of the emissions. Don't forget, materials and logistics are about energy and emissions too. They're not just about materials. So it's really important that you use all the toolkit, and that's what we try to do. We look across the whole value chain so that you get the full benefits. We will be 100% renewable in all our operations this year, by the end of this year. That's our target. And that will bring benefits as well. And then having agreements with your supply chain on their targets is critical going forward, because you are dependent on the next level down always. So I think all of those is a more holistic approach to the energy efficiency question, and really looking at what you can apply at different stages. AI will make a huge difference, whether it's AI for RAN, so the automation side, whether it's AI in the RAN, so all of the workings of the RAN, so operating the optimization within the RAN, or across the access network and looking at that. So you've got to look at the different ways that AI can be used, because it will be used in different ways.
So, I fully subscribe all these holistic aspects. And in Ericsson, we just published the annual sustainability and corporate report, where we have reduced the Scope 3 emissions by 41% compared to last year. And here we have, you were describing the supply chain, the upstream, and then we have reduced 28%. And collaboration, this is a key, is both objective and a strategy of Ericsson as well. And we have achieved we have collaborated with our suppliers, 325 suppliers, to subscribe to the SBTi science-based objectives. And our target is to achieve next year, in 25, 350. But it's a combination of everything, as you were saying. And it's an holistic approach where we need to enable to operate intelligently the networks for energy efficiency. And here comes the software and AI innovations and automation. So one of the software innovations that we launched is automated energy saver, and this functionality, what enables is running autonomously all the time, and is gradually enables a scale up and down in all the different traffic conditions, because we need granularity. We need different levels of switching on and switching off, because this way we can adapt to the traffic curve. And here I will refer to you, Emanuel, because in fact we use GSMA reports a lot. You are a key reference, and true. And we have in Ericsson we released 2 reports: RAN Modernization Guide and Intelligent Operations Guide. In Intelligent Operations Guide, we refer to one of the courses where you explain how important it is to be able to match the demand to the resources. And this is what we are testing with our customers. With these automated features, we are able to increase the sleeping time in any traffic condition, but also we are able to secure the user experience. Because if energy efficiency is top of your agenda, user experience and performance for your customers is not less top in your agenda. So we need to, with intent-based automation, what we are telling the system is don't provide these megabits per second, but no more if it's not needed, no less. Try to get that, not try, achieve that, the network. And also this will improve the user experience, because as a user you know what to expect. Now without this automation, with the best effort, you can have a great bandwidth or very poor, depending on the demand. But and this is enabling consistent performance. So if you are able to provide consistent performance, you will have better user satisfaction, you will have highest energy efficiency, and this is like the final goal, right? To have the better service with the less consumed energy. And I could talk another one thing, because I have in mind, if you don't mind. We have a target in Ericsson that is reducing the energy consumption in the typical radio site by 40% in 2025. And this year achieved 37%. And we have green bonds and other financial instruments that are tied to that target, the sustainability target. So we are very well on track, because it's only 3% for next year. So we are.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
Because I think we also have to think it's not just about efficiency of energy. So we're looking at how do you monetize the batteries, your passive things that are there, by being able to take you off the grid at certain points. So you can use the battery power that you've already stored up, and it can be when energy is at its highest price. It can be to give back energy to the grid, so that actually you start to be in the grid monetization as well. So you get a win-win situation for yourself, and then go back on. And the key for us is we have a very fast back-on-off system that we have on show at the stand. So if you want to go and see it, you can go and see it.
Thank you, and I think we could continue discussion for hours now. But we can truly see that energy efficiency was more like a marketing item and more like an extra cost item for mobile operators' marketing department 10 years ago. And now it truly became one of the key differentiator. So energy is the only variable cost which is expected to increase for network operators. Human labor and site rental is expected to decrease. So those operators who do not invest into energy efficiency are risking and going to suffer from long-lasting competitive disadvantages. Just as a last message from all of you, can you give in one sentence, what can we expect from you in this space? What is the big thing from your end you would like to mention as a closing sentence?
Okay. I will mention 5 things. Okay. Right?
In one sentence. In one sentence.
So the first is we are focused for our net zero target. Last year we had the report, right? So we said for Europe, latest 2028. We are driving hard to have the first European network net zero this year. That will open the door, and it will be a great signal for the industry. Second, in the UK, you have seen that we are going to merge our network with 3. We aim to have not only the best 5G network, but also the greener and most efficient network through network consolidation and active sharing. Third thing, network modernization. We just ran a global tender for 170,000 sites, and together with our partners, we have new generation equipment which will come every 2 years to improve energy efficiency at least between 15 and 25%. Fourth, artificial intelligence and digital use cases like digital forecasting for energy pricing, smart pricing, and network assistant for energy, right? And the fifth thing, I will totally agree. I gave a presentation yesterday on the Global Digital Forum, energy flexibility, a virtual power plant, right? How we can start using our battery assets to balance, respond to grid imbalances. And that will help us to be not only more efficient, but also generate new revenue streams, which is great for the operators.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think one of the big questions going forward will be, especially with AI coming in, because AI will be everything, and we've got this AI RAN project ongoing, which is with SoftBank and some others, and that's where you start to get AI really into the RAN. But I think it's also, the big other question is, where will the compute power sit in the future? Because that's the power that uses the energy, and where you're going to, it won't be in the phone, I'm sure, at some point. And as you get new end-user devices, the energy compute power must be somewhere else. That's the first thing, and that has to be the most efficient it can be. And as you say, efficient has many meanings, but it basically, in our industry, means you can deliver more with less energy. That's the basic premise. At some point, you will need to look at zero footprint solutions, and how do you deal with that, and using the virtual power plant, using solar, using outdoor, no cabinet, no shelter kind of solutions, which is why I found vandalism interesting, because there's no cabinet, no shelter in some of these things. So that's really important going forward. How do you bring all of these processes together? And it's not just about the radio. Data centers and how we make them more efficient is going to be huge.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. I fully agree on collaboration. In fact, we are together in AI RAN Alliance, so I think the industry needs to join forces and to reduce the energy consumption and meet the zero targets. From Ericsson, we keep as focus TCO, energy efficiency, and in performance, and we will continue in our products every year. Making the effort to reduce the energy consumption and reducing the embodied carbon emissions, but with very high focus on the software. So our strategy is collaboration, keep pushing technology for more efficient hardware and more energy efficient and also intelligent software.
So intelligence. And with this, I think I can see two questions here. We can take these questions after, because we're going to have the fireside chat now. So I'm happy to go back to the chat. We're not closing the session. We're going to have the fireside. But once again, thank you so much for Tony, Kyriakos, and Noelia. It's really appreciated for being you here. Thank you.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
That was a great panel, and here we go. We wanted to change it up and invite Ravi up, who comes to us from Helios, to talk about the tower sector in our last 10 or 15 minutes here. And Ravi, I mean, we haven't had a TowerCo rep come to these events in the past, but I really, really wanted to, have one this year. So thank you. I mean, I guess my first question is, for you as a TowerCo, how do you view the energy journey overall, and what do you see your role in that?
So, well, thanks for having me first. I think it's good. TowerCo is often seen as the poor cousins in these relationships. So it's good to be here and just share some perspectives from the industry itself. So, for us, TowerCos do more than just provide passive infrastructure, and we have a role to play in driving energy efficiencies for mobile networks, sustainability, and also ensuring operational excellence for our customers. And as an industry, we do that in two ways. I mean, Helios Towers, for those who don't know, we operate in 8 countries, so 9 countries, 8 of which are in sub-Saharan Africa. So a lot of the perspectives I have will be based on Africa and developing countries. So the tower model itself is inherently energy efficient. By having multiple tenants, operators on one tower, you reduce the power consumption per tenant, so per customer, it also eliminates the need for redundant infrastructure, so fewer towers, fewer consumption, and all of this contributes to lowering the carbon footprint of mobile networks. So infrastructure sharing delivers that benefit. The other thing which tower companies do, certainly in more developing countries where there are challenges with grid infrastructure, is provide power as a service. And this is a core component of our offering. So that essentially involves the MNOs outsourcing their power requirements so that the tower company offers end-to-end power management for them. So they take over anything power related for a site, and then it's upon them to optimize power at those sites. So that's a key part of the offering, certainly in developing countries where power is a big challenge and therefore cost. So they're the two, broadly the two roles which tower companies play.
And I'm interested in that point on the energy service access. Like, is demand for that growing over time, or and what do you think is, if it is, what's driving that, especially in Africa?
Predominantly cost. So, for most, and again, we'll stick with Africa, but with a lot of developing countries, power is the largest OPEX item for mobile networks. So 20 to 30% of OPEX is attributable to power. So reducing that is important. And when you've left that to a company like ours, a independent tower provider to manage, the onus is on us then to realize those efficiencies, because it affects our bottom line as well as our customers. And at the same time, of course, sustainability. We've heard from all these panelists who've set good, ambitious targets, I'm pleased to hear, but to deliver them, power is a key driver for it. In Africa, there is an infrastructure deficit. 30% of sites are either in off-grid or bad grid locations. So, when we have panelists talking about in Europe greening the grid here, there it's about having available and reliable grids. And those sites essentially require diesel, either as a primary or backup source of power. Diesel is expensive. It's also subject to global oil market prices, currency fluctuations. So that creates uncertainty in terms of cost. And of course, for tower companies, diesel-related emissions for powering sites are our largest source of Scope 1 emissions. And for any MNO in Africa, that's the largest Scope 3. So tower companies have a big role to play here. And like I said, they're the two key drivers. But I think the good thing about that is they're not mutually exclusive. Right? So tower companies don't need to make a business case to pursue a sustainability strategy. We reduce diesel, it reduces cost, and automatically reduces our Scope 1 emissions. So that kind of case, luckily, for many companies and sustainability departments, you have to convince your management to pursue that strategy. We don't. It's in our interest to reduce diesel and support our customers.
And can you give a sense, you may or may not be able to, but within Africa, again, I know that I'm asking because that's where your business is concentrated, on when we can get to do you think it will get to a majority renewable share for energy usage among the telcos in Africa over time? And if so, how long do you think that takes?
Not in my lifetime, but certainly we are seeing a big drive for it. And us as a tower company, big focus for us, I think there's three ways we approach this. The first, as much as possible, we connect sites to grids. Right? In a country like DRC, which is one of our largest markets, population of 100 million, 30% mobile broadband penetration rates. So clearly a big need to roll out networks, drive co-locations on sites to increase digital inclusion. In a country like that, across our portfolio, we have 6 hours of grid time across 2,500 sites. So heavy diesel usage there. So one of the things we do is work with national utility providers like SNEL in DRC, TANESCO in in Tanzania, and we try and get them to map electrification projects around radio planning so that you are serving two social and economic goals by one. Government departments don't talk to each other, so us in between, we try and encourage that dialogue. So that's the easiest way for us to reduce emissions and reliance on fuel. We invest a lot in renewable energy, so solar and batteries are typically what tower sites use. So any off-grid site we had, almost inevitably we will look for a solar solution there with diesel as a backup. So a big effort on solar, new technologies like wind for towers, new generation diesel generators which have a lower carbon footprint and are often fuel agnostic, so you can use cleaner fuels like HVOs, biogas, hydrogen, in addition to diesel, is something we're looking at as well. And then finally, in terms of optimization, there are constraints in terms of, physical constraints, planning constraints, technological constraints. So realizing operational efficiencies, how can we improve operations better to optimize power at sites? And this is where technology is helping a lot. Be using IoT remote management services and smart energy systems powered by AI to monitor fuel on sites. So, what are battery storage levels? How are generators running? Predictive maintenance. So if we see any inefficiencies in fuel, how are we tracking that before there's a complete failure of the system? Automated switching. So switching power sources from grid to battery to solar to diesel. And just general fuel management to spot trends in things like fuel theft, quite common in Africa. So using those technologies are driving operational efficiencies as well, and help for reporting. So for our customers, these technologies give them good data they can use, which supports their reporting and targets.
Well, I'm conscious of time. We've got time for one more question, because we're at 10:30, so this is a lightning round question in 1 minute or less. What do you think what is the single biggest thing your operator customers can do differently in the next few years to become more energy efficient and stay on the path towards sustainability?
It's tough because, it's a tough question for us as well as a towerco. What can we do? My focus is on the policy side. So I think as an industry, and again, focusing on Africa, there's a lot more we can do to push governments to extend grids. There's a big drive to do this. There was a huge event in Dar es Salaam just in January, Mission 300, where GSMA was there as well, getting governments to put digital on the energy agenda. And I think as an industry, that's not something we've pushed at all. So that's something we need to do more of collectively.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your thoughts. Again, we could talk for a long time, but I'm conscious people have places to go and people to see. So that does wrap up the session, guys. Thank you very much for coming out. And as I say, the report is there. The report's there, so take a look at that. Thank you again to our panelists and to Ravi here. Super happy you were able to come join us, and enjoy the rest of MWC. Thank you.